welcome back. Welcome back to Talk. We're at East London Radio. The time is now 1:32. We have a very special guest with us today. I'm going to do a little intro. We have Barbara Njau with us today. She's from Bahati Publishing.
Hello.
Hello.
Barbara has a love for African literature, and her company, Bahati Publishing, was born out of a love for African literature. Barbara wanted to showcase another side of African culture, so she set up the publishing house to showcase the diversity of African creative writing. The publishing house has a goal to become the leading online bookstore for African literature. But I'm going to hand the floor to Barbara to tell us a bit more.
Hi, thank you so much for the intro.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you for coming.
Thank you, you're welcome. So just to clarify, I run the business with my co-founder. She's called Kudakwashi Kamapira. She wasn't able to make it, unfortunately, today, but she sends her best regards. Thank you so much for having us. So just to reintroduce myself, I started Bahati Books with Kudakwashi because essentially we started it out of this massive frustration. So when it comes to Africa, and in fact, actually, I'll start with an anecdote. At the start of this year, we were invited to the University of Sussex to talk to some exchange students from America. And it was an entrepreneurship class, so it was just very broad general interest lecture that we're giving. And we thought it'd be really interesting to start off with a question. So we put this word called Africa on the PowerPoint, and we said, guys, don't worry, I know you're speaking to two African women, but be really honest. We're going to give you a few seconds. Write down 3 key words that come to your mind when you're talking about Africa. And so we gave them a few seconds, and then I said, okay, guys, I'm going to pick you guys out at random. Somebody said, oh, I have an answer. Marathon runners. Somebody said, oh, Africa, safaris. Somebody said, oh, isn't that the place where Ebola comes from, and AIDS?
Oh, no.
And so when it comes to Africa and what people assume and associate with Africa, it's very negative. And one of the reasons when it comes to that is because narratives have been very powerful in shaping and framing how we see Africa. So a lot of books that we've grown up reading, there's this book called The Heart of Darkness by Conrad, I can't remember his surname, but it's a huge book that was written in the 1800s, and he saw Africa as this dark, uncivilized place, and those are some of the bestsellers that we grew up learning about in secondary school. And conversely, when you ask anybody, do you know anything about African writers, they'll say, I don't know, I heard of this person. And so for us, we thought, this is ridiculous, we need to start something. There's a few authors here and there, but they all exist in very isolated silos. And so we thought we're going to start off with a website where we have this platform people can go to, so a go-to place for writers and authors who want to lift up their profiles. But also for people who are looking for African literature. So it's not only people like me who are from the diaspora, who are Africans, who grew up in London, kind of trying to understand the background, but it's also people who, for us, we say our audience is also the Guardian readers, or somebody who is very well traveled, who, enjoys going to Kenya on safari, or who knows a bit about Rwanda. They have somewhere to read more about different aspects of Rwanda. So it's not only the genocide, which is a very important part of its history, but it's also what's happening today. And it's the same in South Africa. In Botswana, for example, one of our poets who we've published called Kat Lego, she's a transgender woman. People don't think of transgender experiences when they think of Africa. She's a middle-class transgender woman. That doesn't even come to mind.
Yeah,
and so
you're
what
giving
we
them a showcase.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, we've got some questions from our lovely team members, and Gaia, you had some amazing things to say.
Yes, because I was really curious about the old publishing company, and I saw that it says that it wants to be the leading publishing company online. So it kind of rings the bell for all the hard copy versus digital copy kind of topic and discussion. And I wanted to know if when you started the company with your friend, the co-founder of the company, what were the reasons behind choosing to be online only, and if you want to just stay online for the moment and then think about it in the future, or if you want to change that, and there are like financial reasons, business reasons, philosophical reason. What is it? Why did you choose to be online now, and what is going to happen in the future?
So the reason why we chose online, number one, is one of the factors, so Bahati Books is actually not a new idea. I've been thinking about it for about 3 years. So before becoming self-employed as an entrepreneur, I used to work at the Financial Times as a journalist, and I covered Africa, Asia and the Middle East, and I travelled extensively. And so my boyfriend said, because I'm an avid book reader and I used to be a very hard copy type of person, and so my boyfriend said, Barbara, you literally are carrying several books at a time. Let me buy you a Kindle, give it a try, and if you don't like it, you can always go back to your books. So he bought me this Kindle, and I remember being really shocked that I could have 100 books, and if I'm on the plane, because I'd be taking 16-hour flights to Singapore, South Korea and so on, I could just read. And it kind of started off this curiosity. But the challenge is that what I found is beyond kind of the major names. So maybe there's Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, there's another guy called Tendai Huchu who are fantastic. But beyond that, when it came to African literature on Amazon, Amazon would recommend people who've bought Half of Yellow Samba Chimamanda have bought Blood Diamonds, Child Soldiers, so on. And I remember years ago thinking, why is Amazon telling me about Blood Diamonds when I just want to read about some modern woman and her experiences in Kenya? Yeah. And so the idea of ebooks and why we focus on ebooks is because through my experiences of having a Kindle and now a tablet and a smartphone, I've found that it's so convenient.
Yeah. Do you think that's the way to go then? I mean, would you ever get into kind of the print, the smell of a book? I mean, for me, it's the smell of a book, the smell of the pages, the fact that you can put a bookmark, your own
so it's that
bookmark.
Whole experience, right? And I think, so the other aspect obviously is the financial aspect.
Yes.
So it's incredibly expensive, and the reason why there's only a few publishers in the space that people think of, Penguin, Hachette, is because if you even want to have a bestseller, having a print run of 10,000 books is expensive, but that's nothing. And so for us, number one, that was the financial reasons, but number two, in terms of trends, more people are reading and using the e-readers. And what we see is that it's not mutually exclusive. It's not I've completely dumped books in favor of the e-reader. It's kind of like when TV came out and radio. So radio is for on the go. My Kindle has been amazing when I'm commuting in the morning and I literally do not have very much space. I can't open physically a book, but instead of getting bored and thinking, let me read this book once I get off on the train, I can take out my smartphone. So what we found is actually gaining a deep kind of understanding of online and e-commerce platforms is actually going to serve us long term in terms of, because we feel that this is a trend that's going to be inevitable, and more and more people are going to get onto ebook readers, and smartphones are getting cheaper. But it's not mutually exclusive. We're not saying that this is the death of books. We're just saying that for us, from our perspective, we just feel that at least for the next 2 to 4 years, our expertise is going to be very entrenched in a market that we believe is growing really rapidly, and that's ebooks.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I was going to say, because you mentioned television was supposed to be the death of radio, but that didn't happen. And I remember 2009 was the digital age when ebook took over, and then first quarter of 2011, ebook was the percentage, the rise was ridiculous, and there was a forecast that by 2018 ebook will take over and print will be gone. Well, 2015 arrived and that was a different case, and now they're both neck and neck. They coexist just like radio and TV does. Do you think that was just the fear of something new, and then something new is about to start, people just get panicky, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and then it just start, the debate was crazy.
Very polarizing. Yeah, I think that what you're asking, and not to get too deep, but this is part of the wider human condition. When there's anything new, people automatically react either by fear or by being really over sensational. And so obviously, as somebody who's an ebook evangelist, a converted one, I have to be honest, in terms of the statistics, you're correct. So when Kindles became really popular in 2009, between 2009 and 2011, there was a massive uptake because most people started buying Kindles, and there's just that novelty. And it has kind of ebook sales last year actually dipped a bit, and that is explained in terms of when you read the journals and things, by people that novelty element wearing off. And more people now are kind of seeing that there's a balance between, if you want that hard copy which you're going to keep on reading, you buy a book as opposed to ebooks. However, I think that the debate is sometimes too polarized, and in fact we're going to be having this debate in Africa Writes. So this is an event that's held by Royal Africa Society in July 1st to 3rd. We're going to be having a debate about the digital versus hard copy. What we want to say is that it's not mutually exclusive. It's not, it's not always loggerheads. We're not saying hard copy is terrible, but what we're saying is that for different situations, people adjust and read and consume things in different ways, right? It's just like even food. You want to eat gourmet food when you're with family, when you're having a massive event, sitting down. This doesn't necessarily mean that you never eat takeaway food. Takeaway is probably going to be for when you're on the go. And that's essentially what ebooks are like. So, if you're going on holiday to Mauritius for 2 weeks, you probably don't want to carry like 10 books. You will probably want to have a Kindle. But if you want to reread this massive, personal development book, and you're reading it for the 5th time, you probably want to read that in hard copy.
So how can people download your books? I mean, do they go onto the website? How does that whole how do the mechanics of it work, and who's downloading?
Okay, so just to plug us a bit, our website is www.bahati, Bahati books, Books, so one word, .com. Our website has the samples of books, so if you're interested in reading a book but you want to first try it out, you can go on our website. On the Shop Now page, you can just download a copy, just a free sample. But should you wish to read the full copy, we have our books available on Amazon. But also we have our books available on Android via a free app called Okada Books. So that's OKADABOOKS.
And we'll put all these details up.
Yeah. That's a free app which you can download, and our books are available to buy via that. And hopefully we're talking to different platforms and different book providers, and we're hoping to have our content available on as many platforms as possible. So as at present, our books are available to download on Amazon and Okada Books. All the reader needs to do, if you have an Amazon account, you can just download, and Kindles, you can also have them on your smartphone as an app. How it works is we, promote on our social media. So if you want to know anything that's happening, just follow us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram, Bahati Books, just search for us, and all our titles and little excerpts. So we have little quotes that are available, and if the reader really likes it, read it and see. And
how can people get actually involved? So if you've got budding writers out there or creatives who are like, I really want to, I've got something to say. Do you welcome that?
Yes, very much. So what we welcome is, as long as the person is interested in talking about the African experience, or, you don't even have to be necessarily African yourself, we're talking to African Americans, and we're talking to people who are Afrikaners, so white Africans. What we love is if you contact us directly, info@bahatibooks.com, that's our email address. Send us a short synopsis and a sample of your manuscript, and we always get back to anyone who reaches out to us.
Are you receiving a lot of manuscripts?
Yes, so I think a day we get between sometimes 5 manuscripts, sometimes 10, and it can be very hard to keep up with all the feedback and the requests, which has been overwhelming and really positive. But it's a team of me and Kuda Kwashe and then all our freelancers, so it can sometimes be tough.
Not to be nosy, how many manuscripts do you have to read a day or week? Because this would be like your screening process, right?
Yeah.
How many do you go through?
Okay, so we have a freelancer that's now become very core to our focus. In fact, we've got 2 freelancers. So myself and Kuda Kwashe, we ourselves look after 3 manuscripts, and then the team themselves, so the freelancers, look after, I think at a time, 10 manuscripts. And it can be very time consuming. And the reason why we also decided to take on more freelance talent is also because what we're trying to do is spread the word. And whilst we love reading and love kind of consuming the content, we also want to let people know who we are, and also give our authors the space to get promotions and so on. So yeah, it's we're reading less and less manuscript. When it started off, because it was just us 2, we were reading I think 10, and it was just overwhelming, and we had full-time jobs at the time, so it was just crazy. But
so can we say also that if someone is not maybe an author but is a freelancer, can they contact you?
Yes,
if they want some jobs,
definitely.
Maybe, and they're interested?
definitely. Again,
is interested.
Come over here.
So definitely, freelancers. If you're a designer, if you're a writer, if you're an editor, reach out to us. We're more than happy, and we're always seeking kind of independent talent, because we really are grateful for our network who have helped us a lot, and that's something that we really value.
Initially, you said that a lot of people, they grow up reading books that give a negative portrayal of kind of Africa and all of that, and how it's about going up through the education system and reading those books. Do you think we need to get to a process of kind of integrating African authors into the curriculum in order to kind of combat that negative stereotype?
Definitely.
Is it something that's going to have to come over time, where parents educate their children at home to read those authors?
No, I think it's both. So one of the things that we wish to do is proactively talk to educational institutions, because I think from a very young age, when I went to primary school in Kenya, I knew about William Blake and I knew about Oscar Wilde. I only found out about Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who's a really well-known Kenyan author, much later in my life. And I said, why did I not learn about him? And why did I not learn about all these people like Chinua Achebe, who I also learnt about when I was much older in secondary school? And so I think Africans have played a very integral role in global development. The British Empire relied a lot on African labour, African intellectuals, yet somehow that is not reflected in what we're reading. Even the World War, the First and Second World Wars had African soldiers, and so why is that not reflected in what we're reading and how that shapes what we see? We can even know about French authors, but we don't know anything about African authors. So for us, we also want to get into our authors' work into educational institutions and kids reading what poets write and what African writers write.
I mean, like Jess said, it's not, trust me, it's just not here. It's in Africa itself, because I did my primary school in Nigeria as well, and you don't know nothing about African authors. It's all about, the Western authors and the books and all that. So I think it's both ways, like both African schools and schools over here, they need to put that into the curriculum.
Yeah, and I think the challenge on the African side is because a lot of African countries just inherited the colonial systems. So they didn't, once the British or the French or whatever left, they kept all the structures they are, including the government, but also their educational curriculums, and that needs to change, and that's what we wish to push for as well as we grow.
So you're saying now is the time, there's a big kind of movement.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as obviously your publishing company doing this, and are there a lot of events that you go to where you're promoting this?
Yes. So I mentioned earlier that we're going to be at Africa Writes in July, the 1st to the 3rd of this year. But also we're going to be attending a festival in Uganda called Writivism. It's a huge festival that takes place in the capital called Kampala. And that is also an amazing event that is going to be bringing together lots of talent, particularly from Africa. The only challenge that we see is that there's lots of activity, including us, but it's all in silos, so it's all fragmented. And what we wish to do is create those connections, because there's enough of us, but we operate in a very isolated manner. And the second thing is also we wish to start partnering with more mainstream European kind of events. So Hay Festival, London Writes, and there's a lot of Edinburgh Festival as well. We also wish to have a presence there. So there's activity, but especially on the African side, it's still very independent and isolated.
Yeah, and you mentioned there's an event taking place
on the 1st to the 3rd of June, and it's called Africa Writes, and it's going to be amazing. So
and where is that taking place?
That's going to be at the British Library. So the British Library is in King's Cross, St Pancras. It's the world's largest library. It's very hard to miss when you come out. And they're going to take over that entire library for 3 days. So please come along. There's going to be lots of free events, so if you're very money conscious, but there's also going to be a lot of paid for events. Our roundtable is actually going to be free. So please go on the website or email us actually.
What will you be discussing at the round table in terms of what can we what can we look forward to?
We're going to be talking about digital versus hard copy, and one of the things that we want to have is people who are not converted to digital to come in and grill us.
Yeah,
exactly. So come in and grill us and ask us why digital, why is that interesting, because we want to let people know this is something that's amazing. Again, I'm soul turned into Paul when it comes to hard copies, because I used to be really against Kindle, and I'd say I'll never read anything on a screen for fun, but actually now I read lots on digital.
And how did the British Library get involved in this? I mean, what's their interest? Is it just they've noticed that there's a need, a niche you know, for this type of thing?
Yeah,
Or-
so the British Library actually they actually had this huge West Africa exhibition for I think 5 months at the start of this year and at the end of last year, and they have a massive catalogue of African literature published a long time ago, and so they've been very, very active in working with African authors. The problem is that when it comes to literature and intellectuals, they tend to be too high level and they don't go out to talk to non, you know, not intellectual.
Yeah, so what genres are we kind of looking at? Because obviously there are those intellectual texts, but then are we looking at kind of like chick lit? Are we looking at, you
There's gonna
know,
be all
just
of that.
some fun, interesting
romance.
stories? Because I love a good story, and for me, a good story will bypass any culture, race, or
Exactly,
and
so
it's just a
there's
story.
exactly. So there's going to be obviously the historical fiction and the historical stuff, but there's going to be one erotica romance writer who we're hoping is going to be part of our roundtable, and she writes, you know, about really kind of 50 Shades of Grey, but in Africa.
Okay.
There's going to be different poetry. It's going to be a mixture of contemporary genres, sci-fi, but also very historical stuff.
And are there graphic novels and things like that? Does that come into it?
Yes.
Because that's quite big at the moment.
That's huge.
I
That is
love
massive
graphic
at the
novels, so
moment.
I'm really interested.
Yeah, no. There's going to be so we ourselves don't publish graphic novels as yet,
Right.
but British Library has published lots of graphic novels, and there's going to be graphic designers and people who have, you know, stories that are told in very visual. And I think one of our panelists might be. They have this book with kids and kind of depicted in very beautiful graphic design.
Yeah, and fanzines are quite big at the moment. Those the kind of self-publishing. I work at a university, and a lot of the students are publishing their own kind of mini comics and storytelling magazines with graphics and.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
so there's so much going on there, and a lot of them are definitely you're probably going to see a few of those kind of people, but the challenge is just that we need to just spread the word to people.
What are your recommendations from your website right now? What are you reading from your website, maybe, that people can go and look for?
The first recommendation is a book called Nairobi Echoes by Stanley Gazemba. He is a Kenyan-based author. He is actually award-winning, so he is Hay Festival has highlighted him as one of 39 leading contemporary voices alongside Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. The second is a poetry anthology called On About the Same Old Things by a lady called Katlego Kolkez. She is a transgender lady from Botswana, and her poetry is awesome. It just touches upon, you know, things that are just completely, you know, different and people wouldn't associate with. The third one is a mythological book called Coffin of Roses by Miret Bagat. She is from Egypt and she's an Egyptian feminist, and her stuff is very influenced by, you know, the Ankh and all these Egyptian
Oh
symbols.
wow, Barbara! You know what? You've given us so much food for
Thank you
thought.
so
Thank
much.
you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming
You're
in. Honestly, we'll put all your details on our blog. Thank
follow
you
us on
guys.
Twitter and
yes,
Facebook and
thank
Instagram.
you so much for coming in. We've had an amazing show. Thank you guys. Thank you all of you
Thank you.
guys. So stay tuned. We've got John's in the studio now. So stay tuned to East London Radio. We've got International Ear with John Ellis coming up next. Followed by at 3 p.m. we've got Plug the Gap. 4 p.m. we have Soulfulized. 5 p.m. the chat. 6 p.m. we'll have Wheels in Motion. And at 7 p.m. the music takes me up. And 8 p.m. we have the Trust Fund. But yeah, we've had a really, really interesting show. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you.